At the will reading, my parents didn't cry. They didn't look sad. They looked victorious. Like this was some kind of closing ceremony for a war they thought they'd won. We sat in a glass-walled conference room in downtown San Diego, 24 floors above a world that kept turning, oblivious. My sister Isabel wore white. Of course she did. Hair in a sleek braid, eyes bright, like she'd already read the ending. My mother tapped her French-tipped nails against the polished table. My father adjusted his cufflinks, gold ones that used to belong to Grandpa. When the lawyer handed Isabel the check, $10 million, I didn't flinch. I didn't even blink. I stared at the glass focused on the distorted reflection of my own face, the line of my jaw, the way my hand gripped the folder in my lap just a little too tightly. My mother smiled at Isabel like she'd just won something pure, then turned to me with a rehearsed softness that made my stomach tighten. You understand, right, Dana? Your grandfather wanted you to make your own way. You've always been independent. My father added, and accomplished. You don't need help like Isabel does. Isabel didn't look at me, just kept smiling at the check like it might float off the table and kiss her forehead. I nodded once. Quiet. My throat burned. Then from the corner of the room, a voice I didn't recognize said, "Actually, there's one more document." We all turned. He was older, gray suit, wire-rimmed glasses, posture perfect. A second lawyer, apparently. He held a sealed envelope in his hand, faded cream with a red wax stamp. My breath caught. The handwriting on the front, blocky, neat, was unmistakable. My grandfather's. The man placed it on the table like a stone dropped into still water. The ripples were immediate. My mother's smile twitched. My father's fingers stiffened. Isabel sat up straighter, alert. She opened her mouth, probably to object, but no sound came out. This was delivered directly to our office 3 days before Mr. Harper's passing, the man said. He requested it not be opened until after the primary inheritance was distributed. My heart pounded. My mother looked confused. My father leaned forward as if trying to memorize the seal. The lawyer continued, "It pertains to Ms. Dana Harper specifically." For a second, no one moved. Then my mother said too quickly, "That doesn't sound necessary. Walter already made his intentions clear." But no one stopped him. As he broke the wax seal, I felt something shift. Not in the room. In me. Because I knew whatever was inside that envelope wasn't just about money. It was about truth. And truth, in a family like mine, was more dangerous than any secret they'd ever kept. And it would lead me back to the last place I ever expected to go. My grandfather's cottage on the cliffs of Mendocino, where the ocean once sounded like home, and now whispered with the weight of something unfinished. I hadn't been back to the cottage since the summer before Grandpa died. It sat tucked along the cliffs of Mendocino, where the trees grew sideways from wind and the sea pounded the rocks with the rhythm of something ancient and angry. Driving up the winding road, my hands trembled on the wheel. The eucalyptus lining the path were taller now, but the mailbox was the same. Rusted red, dented on the left side where Isabel once hit it backing out too fast. Even that memory made my stomach twist. I parked near the porch. Gravel cracked beneath my boots. The same wind chimes hung from the roof's edge. 3 silver tubes and a glass shell he found on the beach. They used to sound like summer afternoons and lemon tea. Now they just sounded hollow. The front door was still chipped white, flecked with old salt and sun. I hesitated. My hand hovered over the door frame, instinctively reaching for the loose nail Grandpa kept forgetting to fix. Before I could knock, the door creaked open. "So, you finally decided to show up." Her voice hit me like a slap. Sharp, familiar, and ice cold. My grandmother. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes unreadable. Her gray hair was pinned back tight. She wore a navy cardigan I remembered folding for her after laundry summers ago. I froze. "Hi, Grandma," I managed. My voice sounded small. She didn't move. "They said you were too busy, that you'd moved on, that you didn't care to be bothered." Her jaw tightened. "Walter called for you, Dana. Every single day." My chest caved inward. "I didn't know," I whispered. "I tried to call. I came by in March, Isabel answered. She said no one was home. I left flowers. She narrowed her eyes. We were here. Always here. Silence swelled between us like a wave about to break. Then without a word, she turned and walked inside. I followed. The air inside was heavier than I remembered. Same faded wallpaper, same ticking clock, but it felt like the walls were holding their breath. She returned carrying a small leather notepad. Grandpa's. She handed it to me without a word. This is the number he kept calling. I glanced down. Blocky, neat handwriting filled the page. But the number wasn't mine. Not even close. Grandma, I said quietly, I've had the same number since college. This isn't it. She stared at the page for a long time. Her lips moved slightly, like trying to unsay something that was already too late. They told us you changed it, she whispered. Said you didn't want to be found. That you were ashamed of us. My knees weakened. I stepped back until my shoulder touched the hallway wall. No, I said. They lied to you. Her hand trembled. And for the first time since I stepped through that door, she looked like she might break. We didn't speak much after that. My grandmother sat in her armchair by the fireplace, staring at the notepad like it might change if she just looked long enough. I sat on the floor near the coffee table, my fingers curled around the edge like I was bracing for impact. Then she stood. Her movement slow but sure, like someone who had carried grief long enough to balance it with anger. I'm calling them, she said. I blinked. Calling who? She didn't answer. Instead, she walked into the kitchen, reached for the rotary phone mounted on the wall. Yes, the same one Grandpa had refused to replace, and began to dial. The clicks of the dial felt strange in today's world, but they were steady, deliberate, like loading bullets into a chamber. When the line connected, her voice dropped into something I hadn't heard before. Not stern, not cold. Steel. Betty, I need you, Jacob, and Isabel here. Now. A muffled protest came from the other side. No, it can't wait, she snapped. Be here in an hour. I'm not asking. She hung up without saying goodbye. I stared at her. The lawyer is on his way too, she said simply, her eyes not meeting mine. Grandpa's lawyer? I asked. She nodded. Your grandfather left instructions, specific ones. The contents of that letter weren't to be read unless we were all present. I swallowed. He knew this would happen? He planned for it, she said, turning away. Years ago. The rest of the hour passed in thick silence. I sat at the old kitchen table, the same place where Grandpa once taught me how to fold a proper paper crane. The table still had a scratch from when I dropped a beaker full of saline during one of my childhood experiments. He'd laughed, called it accidental data. Now, I traced that same scratch with my finger, breathing in the smell of lemon polish and old wood. When the knock finally came at the door, Grandma didn't flinch. She placed a hand on my shoulder. Stay here. I'll call you when it's time. From the kitchen, I heard them enter one by one. My mother's voice, falsely cheerful. Oh my, the house hasn't changed a bit. My father's calm, clinical tone. I thought this was all finalized. And Isabel's impatient scoff. Seriously? Couldn't this wait until after probate? Then silence. And Grandma's voice, this time like ice slicing glass. Please, sit down. There was a pause. Mr. Lowell will be here shortly. He's reading Walter's final instructions. No one knew I was in the house. They didn't know what was coming. And truthfully, neither did I. But I hoped, just once, that someone would finally say what I had known my whole life. That what they did to me wasn't love. It was silence, exclusion, manipulation. And it was a choice. The front door creaked again. This time it was Mr. Lowell, the lawyer who had handled my grandfather's affairs since I was 10. He had a kind face, but today it was unreadable. Eyes sharp behind thin glasses, a leather briefcase in one hand. This won't take long, he said. But it must be done properly. I heard chairs shifting in the living room, polite murmurs of annoyance. Then Grandma's voice called out from the hallway. Dana, come in now. My breath caught in my throat. This was it. I rose, each step from the kitchen to the living room measured and heavy, and when I entered, the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. 3 heads turned, 3 expressions shattered. My mother's smile froze on her face like porcelain under stress. My father's jaw clenched so hard I could hear the grind of his teeth. Isabel went pale. Her mouth opened, then closed, her fingers tightening on the armrest of her chair like someone had just torn the script out of her hands. I didn't say a word. I walked to the chair Grandma had quietly pulled out for me and sat down, back straight, hands folded in my lap. Mr. Lowell gave me a small nod, then set his briefcase on the coffee table and began removing documents. "This," he said, unfolding a thick manila envelope, "is the last will and testament of Mr. Walter M. Harper, prepared and sealed under his explicit direction. In addition to standard estate documentation, he has included a handwritten letter to be read aloud, in the presence of all parties." No one spoke. "To Margaret Harper," he began, nodding toward Grandma. "He leaves the cottage and a set amount for her comfort and care. Per his notes, she knows where the rest is hidden." Grandma didn't react. Her eyes stayed fixed on the table. Mr. Lowell flipped the page. "To my granddaughter, Dana Harper." The room tightened. I could feel it, the pull of their attention, the way my name cracked through the air like thunder. I leave the Harper Environmental Research Annex, located at 22 Wincliffe Road, Mendocino, including all laboratory equipment, active grant accounts, filed patents, and the controlling interest in the Harper Creative Trust. A sharp intake of breath. Not from me. From Isabel. I kept my eyes on the table. "Mr. Lowell continued. "And finally, the remainder of my estate, financial holdings, investments, and retirement accounts, shall be divided equally between my 2 granddaughters, Dana and Isabel Harper." A beat. Then the explosion. Isabel shot out of her chair. "What?" Her voice cracked. "You gave her the annex? The whole thing? That's not possible, that's—" She turned to our parents, voice shaking. "You said it would all go to me. You said if I just visited, smiled, played nice." My father looked away. My mother said nothing. I sat still, letting it unravel, because the truth was just beginning. Mr. Lowell raised a hand. "There's more." He reached into his folder and pulled out a letter. Mr. Harper also left this note, to be read aloud in front of the family. I looked down at my hands, willing them not to shake. Because I knew. This was the part that would change everything. Mr. Lowell unfolded the letter carefully, as though the pages might crack under the weight of what was written. Then with a breath, he began. "To my dearest Dana," he read, "if you're hearing this, then I'm gone. But that doesn't mean I've stopped believing in you. In fact, it means I finally get to say the things I should have said louder. Sooner." The room fell utterly still. You were always the one who watched before speaking, who questioned what others accepted. I saw that fire in you the day you asked me why trees lean toward the sea. You were 6. You've never stopped asking why. Across from me, Isabel folded her arms, jaw clenched. My mother looked down at the floor. My father stared hard at the bookshelf like it might save him. "I know you didn't feel like you belonged in this family," Mr. Lowell continued reading. "But that's not on you. It's on the rest of us, for not learning how to see the kind of brilliance that doesn't come with noise and glitter." Isabel sparkled in ways they understood. "You glowed in ways they never tried to translate." My chest tightened. I kept breathing. Just breathing. "Dana," the letter said, "you were never invisible to me. I watched you build whole systems in your head when everyone else saw chaos. You were never a burden. You were my greatest pride." Tears welled behind my eyes. I didn't wipe them. Let them see. Let them finally see. When your parents laughed off your grant win, I kept the newspaper clipping. When Isabel rolled her eyes at your fieldwork photos, I framed one and hung it in my workshop. There was a sharp intake of breath beside me. "Isabel, I know what they did," the letter read. "I know you came to the house and were told no one was home. I know they gave me a fake number. And I know they told you the funeral was at noon. I asked for you, Dana. Every day. I just didn't know how far they'd gone until it was too late. I gasped. So did my grandmother. The silence after that was a living thing. Thick, stretching. Then Mr. Lowell folded the letter and placed it on the table. No one spoke. So I did. I remember, I said softly, winning my first research grant and telling Mom. She said, "Well, don't get cocky. Your sister just got promoted." My mother opened her mouth, but I kept going. "And Isabel?" You smiled at me and said, "Still doing that science stuff?" Cute. Isabel's hands curled into fists. "You always made yourself the victim." "No," I said. "You made me disappear. There's a difference." My mother stood up abruptly, her voice brittle. "Enough! This isn't the place." But my grandmother cut in, her tone sharper than broken glass. "No, Betty, this is exactly the place." My mother turned, stunned. "I let it happen," Grandma said quietly, eyes fixed on the floor. "I believed you when you said Dana didn't want to come. I believed Isabel when she said the number had changed. I let Walter die thinking Dana didn't care." She looked up, voice trembling but clear. "And I've never hated myself more." Silence. My heart ached, but I said nothing. She had to say it. For her, for me. My father cleared his throat. "Look, Dana got her education, her lab grants, her trips. That wasn't free. We sacrificed a lot." I turned to him, my voice steady. "You didn't pay for any of it." He blinked. "Grandpa did. Every scholarship, every flight, every textbook. He funded all of it, quietly, while you claimed I was off finding myself in the wilderness." My mother muttered, "You never appreciated what we did." "No," I replied. "You never noticed what I did. Because I wasn't Isabel." Isabel scoffed. "Oh, come on. You act like I had it easy." "You had it chosen," I said. "Every school, every opportunity, you were the one they showed off. I was the one they edited out of photos." Her eyes narrowed. "You're just bitter." "No," I said calmly. "I'm awake." She stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. "This is pathetic." But Grandma was already rising, slow but unshaken. "I regret that Walter left you anything," she said, facing Isabel. "You may have played the role, but it was never love. It was performance. Transaction." "Mom," Isabel gasped. "Don't call me that right now," Grandma snapped. Then she turned to my parents. "And you two. You used my silence. You used Walter's love and bent it until it broke. You don't get to do that anymore." My mother blinked in disbelief. "You're kicking us out?" Grandma nodded. "Yes, I should have done it years ago." They didn't move, so she pointed at the door. "Out." It wasn't shouted. It didn't need to be. Isabel grabbed her purse, heels pounding against the hardwood like gunshots. My father followed, muttering something about legal options. My mother paused at the door as if expecting someone to stop her. No one did. And when the door clicked shut, it was like the house exhaled. I stood still, not triumphant, just released. Grandma sank slowly back into her chair. "They'll come back," I said softly. "Eventually." She looked at me, her eyes steady. "Maybe. But this time, we don't have to let them in." The first time I saw the annex, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It looked like a barn, because it was. A converted wooden structure nestled at the edge of the cliffs, with wide beams, a tin roof, and wild rosemary growing along the path. But inside, it was magic. Sunlight poured through glass panels that lined the east wall. Workbenches gleamed with untouched equipment, microscopes, centrifuges, even a small 3D printer still in its original packaging. Labeled boxes filled the shelves, each one with my name written in Grandpa's handwriting. And in the center of it all, on a long pine workbench, was my childhood science journal. I hadn't seen it since college. Worn leather cover, torn edges, smudged ink. I opened it slowly, breath caught in my chest. Page after page of notes about soil acidity and honeybee flight patterns. Messy, ambitious, relentless. Just like me. Grandpa hadn't just left me a lab. He left me a home for my mind. In the months that followed, I moved in full-time. I cleaned, organized, applied for permits. I called Tara and Micah, grad school friends who understood failure and hope in equal measure. Together, we launched the Tide Project, focused on regenerative coastal agriculture and ocean microplastic breakdown. We weren't flashy. We worked with small budgets, temperamental data, and more setbacks than successes. We ruined equipment, cried over grant rejections, and once spent 3 days chasing a faulty sensor reading that turned out to be a seagull. But we kept showing up. Every day, we unlocked the doors to a place where we didn't have to explain ourselves. A place where being too passionate, too curious, too stubborn wasn't a flaw. It was fuel. 2 years in, on a foggy Thursday morning, I got an email. Subject: Request for visit. Dana Harper Innovation Annex. Sender: Isabel Harper. I stared at the screen, unsure if it was real. When she arrived, I almost didn't recognize her. No designer heels, no blown-out hair. Just a navy wool coat 2 sizes too big and eyes that looked tired, like someone who hadn't slept in a very long time. She stepped into the front lobby, stopping just beneath Grandpa's portrait. Her voice was quiet. "He always knew who you were," she said, even when I didn't. I didn't respond. I wasn't ready to. She turned to me. "I'd like to see it. The lab, the work, what you've built." I could have said no, but I didn't. We walked the entire campus, through the new greenhouse extensions, into the algae bioreactor room, past the Little Scientist Initiative wall, where photos of students and their projects beamed from every corner. She didn't ask about the inheritance. She asked, "Do the kids get to publish their work? How do you teach them to explain it? Do they get to touch the real equipment?" When we reached the community garden, she stopped walking. Families were harvesting lettuce, laughing near compost bins. A little girl tested soil pH with one of our kits. Isabel turned to me, her voice barely held together. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to see what he gave you, and what you did with it." I didn't answer. I just let her stay. Sometimes that's enough. It's been 6 years since the will reading. 6 years since my parents and Isabel walked out of that cottage like actors exiting a play no one applauded. I haven't seen my parents since. Their names show up occasionally, in articles about real estate ventures, charity banquets in Florida, or alumni newsletters. I never click. I don't hate them. But I don't miss them either. What I think about now is the work. What began in one converted barn has grown into something far bigger than I ever imagined. The annex is now a full research campus. 4 buildings, 3 greenhouses, and 60 acres of test plots along the coast. We've developed drought-resistant coastal seed varieties. Our ocean plastic filtration pilot was adopted by 2 marine conservation boards. Kids from our Little Scientist Initiative have won national fellowships. Some are now scientists themselves. We've partnered with universities in Brazil, Kenya, and Iceland. We host field teams year-round. And last month, I stood on a stage in San Francisco and accepted a national grant for climate-forward innovation. The lights were bright, but I didn't flinch. I wore a navy blue suit that day. In the inner pocket, tucked tight, was Grandpa's pocket watch. The one Grandma gave me last year. Its gold faded but still ticking. Inside the lid, a photo of me at 10 years old, knees muddy, beaming beside a display of bee communication patterns. "He carried it every day," Grandma had whispered. Now it sits on my desk at the annex, right where the morning light hits it and casts tiny golden halos over my research notes. Some days, when the lab is quiet, I talk to him. Not out loud. Just in the quiet between beaker rinses and soil samples. I tell him about the experiments that failed, about the girl from Ukiah who's designing her own water sensor, about the middle schooler who asked me why algae glows. When I almost believed I didn't matter, he didn't let me disappear. Now I know why. Legacy isn't a statue or a bank account, it's a map. Built out of belief, out of choices. Out of tiny markers left behind to guide someone out of the dark. These days, Grandma lives in a cozy apartment above the annex greenhouse. She's slower now, forgets names sometimes, but she still wins at Scrabble and drinks her coffee black. We sit together most mornings in the sunroom. She tells me stories about Grandpa I never heard before. How he once proposed by planting a tree. How he believed soil could remember kindness. How he always knew I'd come back. And I think maybe he was right. Maybe I had to leave to understand what coming home truly meant. Some evenings, I walk to the far end of the test fields, past the irrigation beds and the pollinator gardens to the wooden bench he built by hand. From there, I can see the stars, real ones this time, and they still remind me of the girl I used to be, the one who kept asking why. And when the wind moves just right through the trees, I swear, I can still hear his voice in the leaves. Build the world they said you couldn't. And now, I am.